On this episode, we chat with Khun Weena from the Thailand Clean Air Network.
So if you're wondering what this year's burning season is going to look like, you'll love this episode of the Bangkok Podcast.
Sawadee krap, and welcome to the Bangkok Podcast. My name is Greg Jorgensen, a Canadian who came to Thailand in 2001 to learn the secrets of Muay Thai, but I haven't yet found a Mongkon headband big enough for my melon.
But once you do, you'll start hardcore training.
That's right. That's the point where I'm going to get into it.
And I'm Ed Knuth, an American who came to Thailand on a one-year teaching contract 22 years ago. Fell in love with trying to persuade Thai people that mama noodles are not, in fact, gourmet food. So I never left.
They're so good, though.
Man, Thai people just love mama noodles. I mean, there's just...
You're pouring the boiling water on them, and you're like, this is just sodium and chemicals, but it's so good.
All right, we want to say a quick thank you to one of our patrons, Corey Peterson, who supports us at the show shout-out level. Stick around after we're done talking about Thailand's air quality situation to hear why Corey is the perfect guy to write Hangover 4 back to Bangkok.
Yeah.
We want to give a big thanks to all of our patrons who support the show. Patrons get our ad-free regular show a day early, behind-the-scenes photos of our interviews, a heads up to send questions to upcoming guests, and access to our Discord server to chat with me, Greg, and other listeners around the world. But best of all, patrons like Corey also get an unscripted, uncensored bonus episode every week where we riff on current events and Bangkok topics. On this week's bonus show, we chatted about the rise in cost of eating out at restaurants in Bangkok, the furor over the CNN crew who did a video report inside the nursery where that awful mass murderer happened, and the debate over the number of Thais wearing masks outside, as well as the weird anger coming from foreigners around it. To learn how to become a patron, click the support button at the top of our website.
Right. And as always, if you have a comment, a show idea, or just want to say hi, head to bangkokpodcast.com and click the little microphone button on the bottom right to leave us a voicemail that we will play on the show. And real quick, just before we get started, I want to give a quick shout out to our listener, Neil. He was the first and so far only person who noticed a little change in the podcast that's been going out. But starting with a show 2 weeks ago, Ed, I'm not sure if you even noticed, but I started putting chapter markers in the MP3.
Oh, cool. I did not notice that.
Yeah, so I mean, it depends on what player you use. I use a player called Overcast, which I think is the best podcast player. But you can like skip ahead to certain parts of the podcast. Nice. I mean, our podcast is not broken up into too many segments anyway.
Nice.
So yeah, it's not hugely beneficial, but it is just something I started doing. So shout out to our buddy Neil for being the first one to notice that, and he gets a fridge magnet to go with the other fridge magnet he already has, or something like that.
Well, shout out to you, Greg, for doing that. Always trying to improve.
Thanks, man.
Always trying to improve the podcast.
That's right. And Neil, next time you're in town, let us know. We'll buy you a beer. All right. Well, in this episode, we welcome back Khun Weena from the Thailand Clean Air Network. Now, you may remember Weena from her appearance on episode 66 of season 4, back when Thailand was right in the middle of some pretty gnarly air quality issues. So as we head into the burning season again this year, also known as Sorry Sir, We're All Sold Out of Air Purifiers season, it was great to sit down with Weena again to discuss what's changed in the landscape of Thailand's air quality, what the government is or is not doing to sort things out, how the hard work her organization has done to provide a roadmap for the powers that be to address the hazards of choking air, if they actually read the thing, and what we can expect going into this year's season of poison air. So here is my conversation with our friend Khun Weena. All right. Well, we are happy to have back to the show a previous guest. Welcome, Khun Weena from the Thailand Clean Air Network, back to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me back, Greg.
Yeah. Now, I'm not sure if people remember, but the last time you were on the show, it was a show that aired on January 19th, 2021. So coming up on 2 years ago. And you reached out to me to see if you could come back on the show to discuss the latest update to what's been going on with Thailand's Clean Air Network. And I thought it was a perfect opportunity because we are heading into the dirty air season, the end of the year, and I'm not sure if things are going to go well or if they're going to go badly. But I wanted to hear what you think about what Thailand has been doing over the past few years to make its air better or worse. So, I mean, just start by giving us an update on what's been keeping you busy over the past couple of years.
Oh, okay. So since we spoke then, Greg, here at the Thailand Clean Air Network had managed to obtain, we got 26,500 signatures to support the citizen-led Clean Air Bill.
Mm-hmm.
And that was submitted to Parliament in January of 2022, so earlier this year. So we have that in the bag. And then apart from that, we've also completed the final concept paper. We had 3 sets of concept paper just to bring people back. We used the EU consultative process to develop the body of knowledge. And we started with a white paper, which goes through talks about the general problems related to air pollution, gives a broad brush overview of the air pollution situation in Thailand. Mm-hmm. That was out in 2019. And then in 2020, we released the Clean Air Blue paper, which talks about the impact of air pollution.
Right.
And literally just hot off the press, we just printed the final paper, which is the Clean Air Green paper. And it's a whopping 740 plus pages of solutions. Yep. And so that completes the 3 concept paper, which is the underpinning to support this clean air legislation.
Cool.
Now, in terms of the actual legislation, so we submitted it to Parliament in January, and in mid-April, it was open for public consultation. So what happens is it was actually opened online on the Parliament website for Thais to provide an opinion. There was like 6 questions about it. Every Thai citizen was able to go in and provide their views. It was a bit tough because when they opened it up, the first day was, I think, if I'm not mistaken, 12th of April, 2022, which is Songkran.
Just as everyone's, the last thing they got on their mind is anything to do with work or.
So it was a bit challenging. But with help of a lot of our partners and different people really pushing for it, we got at the end 1,050 people providing their views to this, which is considered humongous, really, because most citizen-driven clean air legislation probably gets people in the single or double digits at most.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's interesting you talked about the blue paper. You said it provides a lot of solutions.
Oh, it's the green paper, the final one.
The green paper. Sorry, I get these colors confused,
That's right.
So it's interesting that the green paper, as you said, provides solutions because, I mean, it's very easy for people like myself and other armchair quarterbacks to sit around and complain about the air quality. But a lot of times, I mean, I don't have any solutions. So it's interesting that you have actually gathered a paper that has some solutions in it. So can you talk a little bit about like the problems that Thailand is facing and still facing with dirty air and some of the solutions that you think might make things better?
The whole problem in Thailand and probably in most countries as well is air pollution. Because it's an invisible killer, it's not visible to the naked eye. It's really hard for people to sort of grasp the severity of it. And most governments, Thailand particularly, isn't set up to deal with this. There's no one particular entity whose performance is tied to addressing air pollution. And because it's something that affects so many different ministries, right? It's very difficult to address it just dealing with one or two. It cuts across many ministries. So what I'm trying to say in short is it's a big structural problem. And that's what we tried to do. Now, so in coming up with a solution, what we ended up having to do is we had to invite subject matter experts to come in. Okay. And then the way we worked is we also had an interdisciplinary team. And our interdisciplinary team included legal experts, and economists, as well as someone who is experienced in the way public participation works within communities in Thailand. So she's actually an expert in public-led democracy systems.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So sort of talking about so the way we had done it is we'll have a subject matter expert go through and write a kind of literature review of the situation in that industry and from an international perspective as well as from a Thai perspective, and then table solutions from their vantage point. And then we had our interdisciplinary team go in, review all that, and provide their input. So the inputs we have for each of the chapters will be solutions from a legal standpoint, solutions from an economic standpoint, and solution from a societal standpoint. What can we as a citizen do to solve this problem? Because of the complexity of the issue, it's going to be tough to just have a solution coming from one subject matter expert. So the way this green paper is divided up, it's 15 chapters, and 12 chapters. It covers all the different industry groups. So we have a chapter on agricultural sector, we have one on forest management, we have one on transboundary haze issue, we have a chapter on the industrial sector, we have one on the energy sector, we have a chapter on the mining sector, we have a chapter on waste management, we also have a chapter on urbanization, and we also have a chapter on the vehicle sector. And then we also, so these are all the various sectors that are part and parcel of the air pollution situation. And then we also have chapters devoted to the three sets of actors. So one is on the role and responsibility of the state in resolving this. The second one is the role and responsibility of the corporate sector, the private sector, and the financial sector in resolving this problem. And then the last one is the roles and responsibility of civil society, and all of us,
Sure.
when we take up, we're all part of civil society, can do to resolve this problem. So that's how we divided it up. And then there's an opening, and then there's a very comprehensive synthesis analysis chapter and a conclusion chapter.
That sounds incredibly comprehensive. I rarely see anything that's been thought through so well. And I think it's great because, like I said, it's very easy for people just to say, well, why don't they just stop burning? Or, well, why don't they just make everything electric? Like, and it's the one takeaway I remember from our previous conversation when you were a guest on the show is it is extremely complicated and it's not just that simple. So especially in a country like Thailand, when you're dealing with different regions who get their identity and their operating values a lot from their culture. So the Isan culture is very different from the Southern culture and the Central culture. And then that breaks down further into districts and even villages. So it's incredible that you've put this amount of work into identifying so many different areas of society that each have a role to play in solving this problem. Then my next question was, playing a little bit of devil's advocate here.
Sure.
This all sounds well and great, but what does the green paper do? Does the government does a dude from the government just come out and go, oh yeah, great, thanks for that, and then just walk back into the building and put it on the pile of books that they'll get to later? Like, what will happen because of this study?
So there's many purposes behind these sets of concept papers. So one is just sort of general, sort of educating different actors within the ecosystem about this. But there's very specific groups of actors that we are trying to reach. And specifically, it's the policymakers involved in this ecosystem. So it's the executive branch, it's the legislative branch, and the judicial branch. But we are delivering the entire set to these people. So at the end of it all, it will not be something, hopefully, that will be just sitting there, collecting dust on a shelf.
Yeah, hopefully. Again, playing devil's advocate. So then, like, for the last time, what is their motivation to act? Like, have you explained to them the financial benefits of having cleaner air, the health benefits? Like, why would they decide to take this report seriously? This coming from someone who's an extreme pessimist when it comes to governments doing anything that's not in their own interest.
No, I hear you. So, if a government official wants to be reelected come March 2023, at some point, they will have to answer as to why something that's costing this country almost 12% of our GDP is not being touched upon.
That's the healthcare, I guess.
Yes, that's a social cost right now. That's a social
The social
cost
care.
of air pollution in Thailand.
Mhm.
Based on statistics that came out that I saw, it's about 32,200 Thais that are dying annually because of air pollution.
Okay.
And that's probably a bit of an understatement too, because there's latest research coming out now about the strong linkage between air pollution and lung cancer. So lung cancer in Thailand is now the second largest killer of Thais.
Really, lung
And
cancer?
yeah,
Wow.
I was just reading it just before, and it was like there's figures of between, I've heard figures cited between 23,000 to 40,000 Thais dying of lung cancer annually in Thailand. That's a lot of folks,
Yeah.
and we're
Yeah.
so I think from a policy perspective, it's a little bit short-sighted, I would say, if you are going to go into an election season and not have policies in place that hang together in terms of solving air pollution. And we've given it to
Nice.
you. I've given it to you.
It's right there. So let me switch tack a little bit and go from being a
Sure.
pessimist to an optimist. Over the past couple of years, I've heard from various friends here and there. Every once in a while, someone will say, the air quality's been pretty good lately, hasn't it? And we'll say, yeah, it's been not so bad, because we all remember a few years ago, schools were closed. They were saying stay indoors. Everyone was buying air purifiers. You couldn't buy them at the mall because they were all sold out. And then our mutual friend, Di, who's an environmental consultant of some type. I'm not exactly sure what she does, but she's really smart. Um, she sent me this Facebook group called PM 2.5 AQI Thailand, and they've got a very interesting chart that I wanted to discuss. And what this does is it basically marks the air quality of every day between 2011 and 2022. And I'll include this in the mail we send out to our patrons. But basically, from 2012, you can sort of see the December, January, February areas are not very good in terms of air quality. There's a lot of dark red days. There's a lot of red days and orange days, but they become significantly, or notice not maybe not significantly, but noticeably fewer as the years go on. 2020 and 2021 were not great, but they were better than 2015 and 2016. So it would seem to the uneducated eye that things are getting better. There's a big question mark at the end there. Am I reading the data right? What is your data telling you? Have mitigation efforts had an impact, or what's going on?
Yeah, so that's a good observation. I think it's a combination of different things. So one is COVID, right? So if you look at 2020, 2021 data, there is a
Mm-hmm.
global COVID, no people staying at home, not people not traveling, and factories ramming down because global demand's come down. So that's definitely had some impact, extraneous impact.
Yeah, at the
And
beginning of 2022, the air was very good. But
yeah, so there's that factor coming in. There's also another impact, which is El Nino, which is the weather patterns. So
mm,
how we've had unusual rains, and so I'm specifically up north. When I talk to folks up there, and we're asking them, they all say, "Oh, it's really just because they can't light the fires as much, right? Because it's raining." So there's that involved. I've heard some things apparently, like for example, sugarcane. I've heard that in the last season they've been better at containing that because there's I think that I've been hearing that some of the sugar mills have started to impose more stringent requirements and not buying some of the burnt sugarcane into their refineries. So there's some things like that. But then at the same time, I'm literally last week, I met some indigenous people coming from up north and had to chat with them because they were at the UN at the Responsible Business and Human Rights Forum that I attended.
mm,
And I just struck a conversation with them, and they said to me, yeah, they've been very strict on not burning. In fact, they've banned us from not burning. I think they said in the last 4 months now. particularly for indigenous groups, they have specific reasons why they burn. It's part of the cultural practice, and actually they're very specific on how they do it, and it's part of their crop rotation, and and
Right.
they grow a mixture of crops. And the issue for them is they said, you know what, we don't have food to eat anymore because of this ban. We can't grow.
This goes back to what we were saying about how it's complicated, right? You can't just say, this is the solution to everything. I mean, it's got to be done intelligently and in stages, and according to what's appropriate. Like, these people obviously can't abide by the same rules that one of these massive industrial farms has to follow, because they depend on it for food and living and stuff like that, whereas one of these big agricultural cooperatives might not. So you can't take the same rule and just apply it to everyone across the board. Again, it's not just as simple as saying you can't do this and you can do this.
Yeah, that's a real issue. And that's why I think there's a lot of confusion around this clean air legislation. And I think, and one of the things that we've tried to say and we've tried to convey, but the message hasn't really gone through, is that we get a lot of pushback from people on the ground that say, that work with, particularly some NGOs that work a lot with local communities. And so they have this preset assumption or presumption that, oh no, any legislation is going to basically put indigenous groups and communities at a disadvantage, right? And that's a assumption in their minds, but they have not read this legislation, and we've said it in so many different ways. I don't know how else we can communicate this. And the way that this citizen-driven clean air legislation is set up, or draft legislation is set up, is we actually have a committee set up at a provincial level. And that committee set up at the provincial level has representation of people who live there, people who are local people, who have the know-how, who have the knowledge, indigenous people who have, existing practices, who do live close to the environment, who are there, who are rights protectors, who are protecting the environment right now, for them to be part of the table to manage the situation. Right. So this is the part that I don't think they understand. And the other part is they say, oh my God, this legislation is going to have fines that's going to, yet again, small scale farmers and communities living up in the mountains are going to be fined horrendously because of this. And the answer is no. There is not a single thing in this citizen-driven clean air bill that imposes a fine here. Whatever fine or penalties that already exist in other legislation, we haven't touched it. But we have not put any additional penalties in this legislation. So there's a lot of what I would say unjustified fear and phobia out of complete misunderstanding.
It's funny because, again, all you need to do is point to these reports, the Green Report, and say the answers are here. Everything's in here. All the information you need is here. The solutions are here. Just read the report.
That's a bit of a problem. I don't know. We've communicated in so many different ways. We've done short videos, we've done longish videos, we've done panel discussions, and the message doesn't seem to get across. And it's not just the message is not just not getting across to some of the community, certain community leaders that work with certain NGOs that work with local communities, but there's also a problem of getting across to the corporate groups as well. And one of the phobia that they have is, oh my God, legislation is the end of me, right? And we're telling them, no, people, do not be so fearful. Don't be fearful of the unknown. Actually, why don't you read it first? And then the second thing you should probably do is you will see that we have a clean air fund in here. And the clean air fund is set up specifically in a way that if you want to clean your operation, this will help you. It will help subsidize for that. Right.
Yeah.
And puts you at an edge, because then you are able to you'll be able to compete better in your higher value markets. You know what? Legislation coming down the pipe in the US, in Europe, you are going to have to transition. We are actually here to support you in that transition. You need to have supply traceability that's very clear.
Right. A lot
So
of big companies are taking ESG factors into consideration now when they're setting up new factories or signing, contracts with suppliers or distributors. So I think it's working. All this effort is working. People are
mm,
understanding the issue, they're understanding the problem, and hopefully they're going to be understanding the solutions pretty soon too. Well, as we're wrapping up here now, I've given a heads up to some of our $5 patrons of upcoming guests, and they can send in some questions. So we have some questions from our listeners, if you wouldn't mind. So our first question is from our buddy Vinny. He said, "I would ask Khun Weena what the alternatives to burning are, and if they are easily implemented, i.e., composting. Also, are there any solutions that can be government funded, or does everything need to be grassroots?"
there are alternatives to burning, right? The problem is there is no one there to work out the whole solution from beginning to end,
Mm,
right?
right.
And that's the thing. So, for example, so what we're having is we have farmers that are being scapegoated about this, right? That
Yeah.
it's their fault that they're burning. Well, you know what? They're part of a much bigger supply chain issue. So we actually take a sort of, we put the onus back on the entity that's most able to deal with it. So who's responsible for creating this incentive throughout the system, right?
Mm,
And there's specific roles that the governments can play. I mean, these equipment to go in and do a lot of the cutting of a lot of these agricultural byproducts. They're very expensive. They're 12 million baht a pop.
the equipment, the tractors and stuff.
Yes, so that needs to be subsidized,
Hmm.
right? So that fund's going to help with that sort of thing. It's going to help transition, farmers into that. It's going to help transition whoever wants to get involved in providing solution here, right? And so it will encourage everybody to be part of the solution, which is not happening right now.
Right. And the second part of his question sort of echoes what you said earlier in the show about the government not having this existing infrastructure to make these kind of solutions and to implement these kind of, A to B, A to Z, solutions and stuff like that. So these solutions can't be government funded. They have to be grassroots, or they're better when they're grassroots. How does that work?
At the local level, we actually have a structure where people who are living in that space, and that's one of the requirements. You have to be somebody who resides in that local region. You have to have
Right.
knowledge on this. You sit on the actual committee to come up with solutions for your area. So the
Yeah.
solution will be bottom up. I mean, we truly this legislation is very much bottom up, right?
Right.
And the role of government really is an enabler to help support this in whatever way. Yeah.
Okay.
So that's how the solutions should be played out.
Connected to something we talked about previously, James says, "Does the Thai government realize the impact on tourism this problem has, and are they really able to do anything about it? Seems like it would make sense for the government to subsidize mechanization of the field clearing." So you said those things are very expensive. So what's their role in this?
Yeah, well, the government already has some. Actually, right now, I have heard that the Ministry of Agriculture does have some kind of program of providing some of this machinery, but it's not well done and it's not well rolled out, and it's limited in scope, right?
Okay.
And again, I think it goes back to the problem. It's not really kind of they don't consider it as part of you know their thing. So maybe it's a side thing they're doing. I don't know, but if this legislation goes to pass, I mean, then it's all hands on deck, and you have to be part of the solution.
Right. Yeah. Um, and the last question is from Gary. He says something. He said, "What percentage of pollution or carbon release is caused by the burning season?" Because every December the air gets bad, and I think what most laymen like myself say is like, "Well, it's because of the burning." That's sort of like the catch-all thing that we blame it on. Well, the burning. So, is that the major cause of this, or is it a part of it? And what percentages are we looking at?
So it varies by region a lot in Thailand, but
I guess so, right? Like Chiang Mai obviously
yeah,
would have a lot
yeah.
more
So up
burning than
north,
Bangkok
so
would.
yeah. So Chiang Mai has a lot more burning. We have less here, but it still affects us because it's burning in the central region, right? So it
Yeah.
varies by yeah, and then the south is a lot more transboundary. And then you've got burning of different types too, right? You have agricultural waste burning, you have burning happening in the forests as well, you know, clearing land and got all sorts of reasons. So yeah, it's a mixed bag. But predominantly the burning is more up north, and
Yeah.
in the northeast. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And Gary also says, he says, by the way, I spent 7 years living in a small North Queensland town where the main industry was sugarcane farming. Local farmers told me they used to burn the cane there, but stopped about 20 years ago. Their harvest has increased since because the stubble lays on the ground, which aids moisture retention and means less use of fertilizers. It also reduces weeds, which means less use of nasty weed killing chemicals. Benefits include huge reduction in costs for farmers and has the added benefit of less chemicals washing out into the Great Barrier Reef. So,
And I need
you
to
know.
get in touch with him because I need voices like that. Yeah, we need voices like that. We need to have somebody talk to to the sugar mills here and the people within in that industry.
Yeah. It's one of those case studies where you're like, look, see, it's you just have to have the commitment to follow it through, and the long term effects will be tenfold what they are in the short term.
Yes, somebody needs to come up with with a strong business case and push it through. And really, it should be the role of the government to do that.
It should be. Well, now it's the role of Gary. Gary, get over here and
would love to have Gary get in touch. I mean, we're trying to do something on the side to try to do a sort of to operationalize this into a type of a small pilot of some sort. So yeah, Gary, if you want to get in touch, I'd love to hear from you.
There you go. 10% finder's fee goes right to us. And last question is from Yari. He says, is there a possibility to donate to the network or another NGO or specific project to help with Thailand's clean air? So I guess that's a good note to finish on. Where can we find out more about the Thailand Clean Air Network? And is there a way for people to donate?
Yes. Thank you for that. Yes. So, our website is thailandcan.org. So CAN stands for Clean Air Network. We completely took the liberty to leverage off President Obama. Yes, we can. So
Okay.
if you remember that, thailandcan.org, right? So that's our website.
Right.
Donating to us. Yeah, we're trying to find a way to do that actually, because yes, we're short of funding. every satang helps. We are trying to set up something. So we will probably be exploring trying to do a crowdfunding campaign soon. And once we have that up and running, we'll have that out on our website. We also have a LinkedIn page as well, and we also currently have a Facebook page, and the links to all of that is on our website as well. The other thing that folks can really help is that right now, although the public consultation on the actual draft legislation is already completed, what we do have though is we have a change campaign that we've been running for like probably 3 years now. So it's also linked onto, you can go to it from our website. Or if you want to go straight to change, it's change.org/Clean Air Act and then TH for Thailand, right? So if you use that, you'll find it. We have about 45,000 people that have signed that, and that is a petition to petition the Thai government to take this citizen-led clean air bill seriously. Would be lovely to have about 1 million people.
All right. Well, our listenership is not that big, but maybe we can help. So listeners, if you're hearing this, head over to those websites. We'll put the links in the show notes and sign and donate if you can, because, this affects us all. And we're getting into the dirty season here. So hopefully we're going to see a lot less red days this year than in previous years. But also we're coming out of COVID now. People are eager to travel. People are eager to get out there and start doing stuff. So fingers crossed. But Weena, thank you for you and your organization and other organizations like you who are fighting the good fight and doing great stuff and just sort of keeping it in the public consciousness, because the more it's out there, the more people know about it, the more people understand it, I think the more can be done.
Thank you so much, Greg, for having me on.
Man, I got to tell you, the timing of this interview is perfect, because the weird thing about Thailand is that you get, depending on what season you're in, there's just a different crisis happening. So now the focus is totally on the rain and the floods, and no one's thinking about air quality. But for the last 3 weeks, I've basically had like kind of a sore throat, kind of rough throat. And I was wondering, I wonder if it's the air quality. So I really personally was wondering, have things gotten better? So for me, this was a perfectly timed interview.
Yeah, it was pretty good too, especially like I said, actually just this morning I went outside and it had rained overnight and there was a breeze this morning and the sky was blue and it was one of those days where you think of like, oh man, if this is what the weather's like in December, it's going to be awesome because
Sure.
December in Bangkok is so nice, but it's often really just messed up by the crappy hazy air.
Agreed.
You know?
Agreed. Yeah, that's
So-
like the burning season.
Yeah. So you get up, you're like, oh, today's going to be a great day. And then you check the air quality index and it's like 130 or something. But I did also we did send out a picture to our patrons too, that from this really cool website that monitors the air month by month, actually day by day. And you can sort of see the air has been slowly starting to get better over the past couple of years. Of course, in the beginning of 2022, it was really good because no one was doing anything.
Right.
But I think overall, there is a sense of optimism because people are starting to realize the inherent costs saved when you reduce air pollution, costs saved from medical care, from tourism. People
Sure.
won't say things like, oh yeah, Bangkok looks nice, but the air is poison, so let's go to Malaysia instead.
Sure.
I think things are getting better. But like Weena said, her organization put out this really awesome comprehensive report that addresses all kinds of stuff. So hopefully the government will take a good look at that too.
No, I mean, obviously there's a lot of variables, a lot of factors, but like you said, it did seem to be like moderately good news, which is it's good. It's good to hear. That's what we need.
Yeah, so many thanks for Khun Weena coming on the show again. And maybe we'll do it like a semi-regular check-in with her every other season to see where things are going.
For sure. I think it's a great idea. Thanks, Weena.
Yeah, so thank you very much, Weena, for coming on. All right, let's get into some love, loathe, or live with, where one of us picks a particular aspect of life in Bangkok, which we then discuss and decide if it's something that we love about living here, loathe about living here, or have come to accept as just something that we have to live with no matter how we feel about it. Last time, Ed asked me what I thought about those queue ticket machines you find in banks and other government organizations where you have to sit and wait. So this week, it is my turn.
Hit me, man.
All right, Ed. Well, this one is actually an idea from our buddy Clinton. He sent it in and asked me what I thought of it, and I thought I would ask you.
Cool.
So as you know, in most restaurants in Thailand that are not fancy schmancy joints, we don't usually tip.
Correct.
But what do you think about restaurants that add a 10% service charge to the menu?
Interesting question. I'm just one of those people that I just don't think that much about tipping and gratuity. So, I remember when I first came to Thailand, I was trying to figure this out. What's the right thing to do? And over the years, I've just reverted to being an American, which means I try to tip around 15%. But if I'm on the ball, I will check the bill to see if they've already added 10%. So obviously, if they've already added 10%, then I don't add 15% on top of that. So I'm a Western style tipper, which I guess makes me extravagant by Thai standards. But whatever, I like to do it. But I don't have a problem with, personally for me, I don't have a problem with an added gratuity. But I could see how some people would. So if you've adopted the Thai attitude that you don't owe anyone a gratuity, then I could see how some people would be annoyed by an automatic one. In my case, I'm only annoyed if I don't notice it and then I add 15% on top of that.
Interesting. Okay, I generally don't tip if there's a gratuity included in the bill. Obviously, I'm not going to sit there and argue about it, so I'll do that. But I would say that I live with it. A lot of times, I don't think the service warrants it.
Well, I guess that's another issue. I mean, we've talked about Thai service many times, and it's a complicated issue because in some ways it's very warm and friendly. So they got some things right, but it of course can be kind of slow and in other ways unprofessional. So I understand why some people feel like tips are not warranted. I get that as well. But if I consider my service bad or really slow, then I definitely won't tip. So I don't tip every time. But I've never had a problem with an automatic added gratuity. So I mean, I wouldn't say I love it. So I guess I would have to throw myself in the live with category. I don't have a problem with it.
Right. Yeah, me too. I don't freak out about it, but at the same time, I'm like, well, it is what it is. I did notice something today, though. Like most times I go out for lunch now, I pay by scanning a QR code.
Sure.
And tips are not included in that. So if a restaurant, it's getting to the point where if a restaurant doesn't add a gratuity to the bill, no one's getting tipped.
Right,
Because people are just scanning the code and taking the exact amount.
Well, I guess they could always work that into their business model, and but it's just the way restaurants work in the West. It's service staff like waiters and waitresses. They definitely count on those tips.
Yeah, I've been told that lately, and now it's up to like 30% in a lot of restaurants in bigger cities.
Oh, that's pretty
tipping in the West.
Yeah, that's pretty brutal. I'm curious if any of our Thai listeners are out there. Since you're not used to giving a tip, what do you think about an automatically added gratuity?
Yeah, it'd be interesting to know.
So, as we mentioned at the beginning of the show, we'd like to say thank you to Corey Peterson for lending us his support at the show shout-out level. Greg, what did you find out about Corey?
Well, we got a message from Corey, and you know what I thought, Ed? You know how when you write a movie, I mean, it always helps if you write a script and you have some actual lived experience with that thing. Makes it feel more authentic, more lived in, more real, like what you're talking about. Mm-hmm. So after reading Corey's message, I figured, man, if anyone's going to make another Hangover movie where they come back to Bangkok, it's got to be Corey, because he had a hell of an experience. So check this out. He said, so back in 2011, I went to Thailand for a week for the first and only time while I was in the Navy.
Damn, that's dangerous.
So immediately you know where the story's going to go.
Yeah, I think I know.
He says they dropped us off at the Hard Rock Cafe in Pattaya, and for a 20-year-old sailor, I can't tell you how crazy it was having a guy toss a monkey in a diaper on me, get burned with one of those high-power laser pointers, some guy with half a body rolling around on a skateboard, and then getting burned by a cigarette. Within 5 minutes of walking out of that place, I was in love.
That's great. It just sounds like a circus freak show. But that would be Pattaya. Like, so if you're a 20-year-old sailor let loose in Pattaya, I think it is going to be like a circus sideshow.
My God, can you imagine? That would almost be like buying a VR video game and just being like crazy Pattaya VR or something like that.
That's right. Well, I've said many times, I'm so glad I did not come here as a young man. I'm so glad. I'm not sure I would have survived.
Yeah, I don't know how old Corey is right now, but I wonder if this was in the age of social media. I hope not, because oh no, this is in 2011. So yeah, definitely there is.
Yeah. Hopefully there's no video of that.
Yeah, hopefully. But anyway, he says, I've lived in Japan, been to Hong Kong, Singapore, Malaysia, Guam, Australia, the Philippines, and South Korea, and Thailand was hands down the best time ever. So
for sure, man.
There we go. I think if you got to take that lived experience there, Corey, all those stories, squeeze them into a script and pitch it to Hangover 4. Back to Bangkok.
Back to Bangkok. I love it. That would be great.
Bangkok has you now. Anyway, thanks for the support, man. That's cool. And next time you're back in town, hopefully you'll be out of the Navy and a bit more in control over what happens, because it sounds like things in Pattaya got a bit out of hand.
All right. Thank you, Corey. A final thanks to all of our patrons who support the show. Patrons get a ton of cool perks and the warm, fuzzy feeling knowing that they're helping support the show. Find out more by clicking support on our website. And connect with us online. We're Bangkok Podcast on social media, bangkokpodcast.com on the web, or simply bangkokpodcast@gmail.com. We love hearing from our listeners and always reply to our messages.
Yeah, baby. You can also listen to each episode on YouTube. You can send us a voicemail through our website that will feature on the show, or even reach out to me directly on Twitter, where I am BKK Greg. So thanks for listening, everyone. Take it easy out there. Take care of yourselves and your families. And we will see you back here next week.
No doubt. Hello.
I have the same problem with a Caesar that I do with getting popcorn before a movie, is that by the time the movie starts,
right,
I'm done the popcorn. And my Caesar's almost gone.
Man, popcorn is so easy to eat in a movie theater. I don't know what it is, but it's just like my hand just keeps going down and up and down and up, and I try to stop. I try to stop, but then a minute later I catch myself just going like this.
Yeah, we've taken to making popcorn at home, my son and I, and we do it in the old-fashioned way, in a frying pan on the stove. Pour some oil in, seeds, and then you just shake it until it pops. And I always put a little bit too much in, because it's so fun to see the lid go up. Like, he loses his mind. He's like, ah! And then I take the lid off, and then a couple of seeds pop out, and we're running around the kitchen. It's very fun.
That is fun. That's cool.
It's all about making memories. Right.